Okay, this is section 3 of chapter 2, Manku, micro and macroeconomics. Okay, microeconomics focuses on the individual parts of the economy, namely how households and firms make decisions and how they interact in specific markets. Macroeconomics looks at the economy as a whole, how the markets as a whole interact on the national level. Okay, essence of microeconomics is buyers and sellers. You are looking at a picture of an electronics um, store, not just any electronics store. This is one in, I believe, Singapore. This is a air-conditioned, huge shopping mall that's nothing but electronic stores, back to back. And so you can go to any of these stores and get whatever electronics goods that you want. This is very close to what we economists call perfect competition. All these stores are competing with each other to sell you that digital camera or that iPod or that VCR or that video game. So this is, at its very core, a market. Buyers and sellers interacting with each other. Macroeconomics, there's many facets to it. There is shopping for Christmas, which is a bellwether of the macroeconomy. In macroeconomics, we deal with individuals, and we'll deal with entire populations, excuse me. We also look at big things that impact the economy, whether there's inflation, too much money chasing after too goods, or deflation, not enough aggregate demand for something so prices can fall. And the actions of the chairperson of the Federal Reserve Bank, in this case Alan Greenspan, is very much a bellwether for what's going to be happening to the macroeconomy. Now the chairperson of the Federal Reserve Bank is no longer Alan Greenspan. Who is it? I'll give you a second to guess that. And if you guessed Ben Bernanke, you are correct. It is indeed Ben Bernanke. Okay, on to the next slide. Two major roles that economists have. Number one, when we are trying to explain the world, we are scientists and teachers. And number two, when we or they are trying to change the world, they are policymakers. Most economists work in academia, and we work as teaching, and we're working on research to try to explain how the world works. And we use statistical analysis to do that, to explore certain relationships. Let's say the relationship between global warming and economic activity is something that we would be very interested in, or the relationship between the amount of money that is circulating and inflation. So we're interested in all these kinds of relationships. Now when we leave academia and we work for an administration or we have our own consulting business, we are a policymaker. Your author, N. Gregory Manku, made the jump from academia to policy. He was the chairman of the economic advisors under George Bush. And when he had enough of that, 3 years I think, he went back into academia. And I think he currently teaches at Harvard. But there's many of us who go back and forth between the two worlds, policymaking and the world of academia. Now, the type of analysis we like to do is something known as positive statements that describe the world as it is. We describe that world. An example of a positive statement is, the grass is green. That is something that is visual. That is something that can be proved. A normative statement are statements about how the world should be. This is known as prescriptive analysis. Normative statements are words of opinion. They are not necessarily words of fact. Now, why economists agree and disagree? good thing I went back to this. Normative statement. Example of that is, I like that the grass is green. Okay, now let's go back to why economists agree and disagree. We agree on the methodology, but not on the underlying assumptions, underlying incentives, and behavior. So, example, we could assume that the government is bad. So that would be an assumption. And one might find example where government intervention has led to bad results. Now, the analysis itself is positive. We're looking at strictly facts and statistics, but the assumption is normative. What do we mean by the word bad? And what do we mean by the word bad in this context? It's not stated. There's an underlying assumption here that is bad. Now, it could be bad for some people and good for others. So you got to always look not necessarily on the methodology, which is what we'll be spending a lot of time on in this course, but on the underlying assumption regarding incentives and behavior. Remember, incentives are things that get people to act, events that may get people to act in a certain one way or another. Okay, I'm sure this finishes off this chapter.